Welcome to the VBAC Home Birth Stories podcast, where we celebrate and share powerful VBAC home birth stories to inspire and support mamas just like you. I'm your host, Ashley Winning, a VBAC home birth advocate and mama of 3, and I believe every woman deserves to birth with confidence and trust in her body. In each episode, you'll hear real-life stories, expert insight, and encouragement to help you feel informed and empowered on your VBAC home birth journey. Let's dive in. Hey friends, I'm going to be sharing something raw with you today that has been happening in my life that I haven't really spoken much about publicly. I wanted to feel safe before I shared my journey and my experience, and I've considered sharing my trying to conceive journey publicly, and I follow a lot of accounts who do that. And I just think those women who do that are so brave to put themselves out there like that. And I'm so grateful that they do that. But I'm not brave enough to do that. I don't know why, but I definitely felt like I needed to protect myself. Maybe because I'm bigger. Like, I just feel like I follow a lot of bigger accounts as well, where plus size women, and they just get so much hate online, so much trolling as if bigger women or bigger people just don't deserve to be here on the planet. And I know that if I share my experience in a non-safe space, that people will say, oh, it's because you're fat, it's because of this. And I don't have thick enough skin to deal with idiots or haters or ignorant people. And I did actually open up a paid area, like a little paid back and forth, where I shared an update every day with a group of women who joined me for about 4 months, which was really nice. And I actually thought, because I started trying about 9 months ago, I thought that I'd probably get pregnant during that time. I'd gotten pregnant with my first baby the first time, with the second cycle, and with my third baby the first time trying. And that was when I was 34. So the last time I got pregnant, I was 34, around about 34. And now I'm 39. I'm going to turn 40 on Monday. So by the time you hear this, I'll be 40 officially. And I knew that 39 made it harder for me to get pregnant. And I also knew that by the time I got to 40, it would put extra on top. So, like, extra risk. I mean, I don't know how close, that's just the statistics. I don't know, if it's like you tick over and you're 40 and your body's like, okay, there's much lower risk now, or if it happens 6 months or a year before, or some women, maybe it happens like 41, 42, 43. But I've been following all these accounts for women who are in their 40s, because that's where I am now. And I feel really grateful and blessed that I have my 3 children, and that I was so lucky, and it was easy for me to get pregnant, especially because when I went in the first time to see a GP and said I wanted to get pregnant, I was told it may take a while because I was bigger, and they recommended losing weight to help with the process. And then I got pregnant straight away, and I was just so happy and blessed. And I was at work with women a woman who sat next to me, she was trying, and she had 4 miscarriages before she got pregnant the first time. And I just kept seeing this representation of like women around me, like mostly average size women. So, society tells you as a bigger person that like you're going to have all these problems. And then I didn't have that problem, but I knew that my mother-in-law had 7 miscarriages before she had my husband. I have like family members who have struggled. I've had, people at work who have struggled. Nearly every single one of my friends, if not all, have had miscarriages. And I went through and had 3 babies with no challenges. And so I understand that I'm sitting from this privileged space. It's making me emotional. I understand that. And I've always understood that. Not only did I know that I was so lucky to get pregnant so quickly, I also was really proud of my body, because everyone, society, doctors,
have put so much emphasis on being fat is unhealthy, it's bad for pregnancy, bad for birth, bad for conception. And my experience has been different. And so there's a lot of shame that comes around having a bigger body. And it sucks because I feel like other women don't have that added shame on top, that they're not in a bigger body. Like if someone's in a smaller body, they don't have the same stories, I suppose, or the same sort of thing happening, but maybe they have different things. You know, it's like when I was pregnant as a bigger woman, I would be happy for somebody to say, oh my goodness, look at your beautiful belly, look how big it is. I would love that. And then other women who are thin, they're like, don't comment on my body. I don't want to know that it's getting bigger. And it's like, that's the complete opposite experience to what I would want, because nobody wants to comment on somebody's body who's bigger. You know, people are like, are you pregnant? Are you not pregnant? And people who do know you're pregnant, they don't want to say the wrong thing. So you can't win no matter what, right? And I understand that, but I'm having a human experience like we all are. And I'm sure that women in smaller bodies have their hang-ups and their stories that they tell, because obviously this is a story that I tell myself repeatedly. But given that I've fallen pregnant in a big body 3 times, I think it's likely less to do with my size. It may have something to do with it, but more likely to do with my age, which is, you know, I've worked with couples now, lots of couples who are 40 plus trying for their first babies. And like, you know, I worked with a client and it took her 12 months to fall pregnant with her first baby. I don't know if they had miscarriages in between, but she was a highly athletic person, like professional level person who looked after her body really well, ate all the foods that she should be eating, and was just constantly active. And so there's so much that goes into fertility, obviously, like stress, what you're eating. Like I like to say that I'm an expert, that I should be researching this, but I haven't. I thought by 6 months I'd probably be pregnant, and then it ticked over to 8 months. So I have read Lily Nichols' book, and I highly recommend it for anybody who is looking at getting pregnant, and, you know, that she's got an amazing fertility book, or listen to the audiobook if you want to. And I've got supplements. I've got all the supplements. I did go to an acupuncturist once, and I've gone twice in the early stages. I thought maybe, just like before when I first started trying, I thought maybe that'll help me. And then I did a bit of energy release work, and I was doing my supplements, and I'd lost like 30 kilos last week. So I was starting from this place of like, I've lost 30 kilos. I feel really comfortable and confident. I've been on a health kick. Now I feel ready to fall pregnant again and take on this journey, because with that extra 30 kilos, I just didn't feel comfortable in my body to do that. So I started off last year on this journey, and I thought it'll take me a few months, maybe. I expected to get pregnant straight away. And in all honesty, the first month I tried, I did get a very faint line for 2 or 3 days, I think it was. And it was before my period. And then I thought I was pregnant. And so I don't really consider that as a miscarriage, but reflecting back on it, like I sent photos to my friend or friends and said, oh my goodness, I think this is a line, but it just didn't get any darker. It got a little bit darker the next day, and then nothing. And then it was just nothing the next day. So for 2 days I had a line, and then the next day, like 2 days later, there was nothing. And so I think that I did get pregnant. I think that reflecting back, I had a chemical, and that one happened before my period came, and then my period came on time. And I remember that period feeling a lot heavier than normal, or just more painful or something at the time. But I never really thought about it, because I just thought, oh, maybe it was the pregnancy test. But then I've gone on 7 months longer testing, and I've not had a single line, indent, anything. It's been like crystal, no lines or anything. So I went on 7 more months of trying, and like watching all these YouTube videos of women crying, getting their P's, big fat positives. I've cried. I've been like tracking my cycle, all the stuff, peeing on sticks, tracking when I'm ovulating. I'm ovulating, like, I mean, I don't know 100%, but I'm getting the ovulation kits, and, my period comes like clockwork every month, every single month, on time, 12 days after. I have had, like, on the 13th day, my period comes basically after I've ovulated every single month, like around that 12, 13 days. So my body's really, like, reliable in that sense. It always has been really reliable. I also get, like, ragey a few days before my period. So I've been noticing a lot of things now that I'm, like, tracking my period and everything. I've even been getting, like, amazing cervical clear mucus on the ovulation days, and everything has been going, like, all the signs, when I'm in these groups with women, because I'm in these trying to conceive groups for support, and there's a lot of women who have, had a lot of troubles. They're not getting their periods. There's a lot of women with PCOS and all sorts of challenges. And I got all my blood work done, checked all my levels. Everything came back fine. I even did a progesterone test or something, and after ovulation, and that came back to say that it looks like I ovulated. And then I went and talked to my GP after a few months, and she was like, well, maybe you've got PCOS. And it's like, she knows that I'm older and that's probably going to take a bit longer, but she is a high intervention doctor. And she recommended that I take metformin. And I thought, well, I asked, like, we talked about what it was for, and it was to just help the ovulation be regular. And I think my ovulation is regular, but she said I also learned that it could help. I'm just trying to think of what it was helping with. Because I got tested, I asked her to test me for insulin resistance. So it was actually for, like, insulin resistance to help the levels go lower. But I know that if I eat the right foods, my insulin will be fine. Like, if I go keto or low carb, I'm not going to have any insulin problems. Everything's going to be fine. Everything will level out. And I did a really great job last year for 5 months of effort, and I lost 30 kilos. And then my birthday came around, and I came off the back of this really hard fat loss challenge over a 4-week period. And I think it was just too much. And I maintained the weight loss for a few months, and then I started creeping up. And guess what? Now I'm back to where I started. So that's really depressing, like, a year later. And you go through all this effort and energy doing this stuff, and that's what happens sometimes. I will add that on top of me losing an immense amount of weight in a short period of time, we did also have 2 deaths last year. We lost my husband's uncle unexpectedly, and he lived in North Queensland, and we had family come over from New Zealand, and we had a funeral for him. I had the police knock up at my door, and I thought, like, I wasn't sure what was happening. I was, like, so afraid this whole thing, like, unfolded, and I was, like, outside in the dark. They came over trying to speak to my husband, and it was a really surreal experience. I've never had anything like that happen, and it was, like, really shocking to me as well. And I think it was really shocking because my father-in-law died the year before, and this is his brother. So it was just a really emotional time for our family. And then a few months later, my grandfather passed away unexpectedly. He was 94. He was just a couple months shy of his 95th birthday, which is the same day as my daughter's birthday, which is the 5th of November. A special day that she chose to be born on her great-granddad's birthday. He just got... Well, over the years, he just was slowing down, but he was still living on his own independently. He was shopping himself, still driving. Everything had slowed down, but his mind was still quite sharp. And he just wasn't eating as much or wasn't feeling very well and fell down at home and ended up in hospital, and surprisingly he didn't break anything. And we thought that he was just going to have a couple days in hospital and come home. That's what the hospital was telling us. But I thought, well, if he's not eating, that is not good. And the hospital didn't know him. And this is where continuity of care comes in, or people knowing people and being able to advocate. I think I was actually sick as well, so I couldn't get down to see him. I had a cold that was just never ending, and of course I couldn't go down to take that to my granddad. But my sister was over here from the UK, and she got to visit him, and my dad got to visit him. I mean, he was down there, lives, down there and that, and I got to speak to him on the phone. And I got to have a bit of a joke with him. I made a joke. He was in a room with 3 empty beds, and I made a bit of a joke with him. I made a joke that I'll drop the girls off with him since he was lonely, and they'll keep him busy, keep him occupied. And I remember the last thing, that was the last conversation. And he was laughing. He always loved a good laugh, and I'm really, really blessed and grateful that I got to have that last conversation with him, and it was joyous, and I got to bring a little bit of happiness, because the next day he was gone. And my auntie had flown over from England. We just kind of said to her, I think you should get out here. My cousin lives out here too, so it's her mother and my auntie, and she just got here a couple of days before, so that was really great for her, and we got to have a little family send-off. So, God, I sound like I'm a mess, really. You know me, I'm a highly emotional person, and I do love to let it out, and I'm happy to be vulnerable with my group of people, my people who love and are here for me. So that's why I'm being vulnerable, and that's why I allow myself to be vulnerable in this space. I also was attending births last year, and, so I had a lot going on. I was getting my feet at attending births, doing that with homeschooling with my children and integrating all of the information that I was learning. I was also creating some amazing resources for my clients for in-person support. So I had a lot going on in my life, and I started trying to conceive probably, I think it was in August last year. So then we come into this year, and I fell pregnant in March, and I got the BFP, the big fat positive, and I was just so excited, so excited. I just couldn't believe it when I saw it. I was just so excited, and the day that I got it, I had a line on a Freer, a first response, and I always use first responses, and I was just so excited. I was 11 DPO, and so I was hoping to see something, and every month was just disappointment after disappointment, and I finally got to see that line. And then that night I did a digital, and it came up pregnant, and I was so excited. My husband was so excited. I told my oldest, she'd been checking the test with me, so she saw the line and she was excited. She was kind of like, oh, I wish I was going to get a surprise now, because I had purchased this little keepsake wooden box for the digital, and some little baby things to present to the girls when we finally fell pregnant. And each month I had to say to them, oh, my period's here, my period's here. It was definitely an integrated family experience. And we even asked the girls almost their consent for trying for another baby, because we wanted to make sure that it was right for them, it was right for us. The little one was really not happy with us having another baby, and sometimes when I'd talk about it, she'd burst out crying. she said she wanted to be the baby forever. And then the more we talked about it, the more she must have got used to it. And as she's also gotten older, and so she's now feels that she's a big girl being 5. She's able to do a lot more, and now she's in the homeschooling experience with her sisters. All her dreams are coming true, basically. And that night we decided to tell the girls because I wanted to invite them into the excitement of it all. I wanted to share with my family as well. We always tell my family, or our families, as soon as we got pregnant, we always had the mindset of like, if something happened, we'd probably want to tell people anyway. So it was my cousin's 40th that weekend coming up. And so we thought, well, we've never had the opportunity to tell anyone in person because everyone's scattered around. This will be the first time we can tell people in person. I was just planning to tell my family, or tell my cousin on another date because it was her birthday. But yeah, it was exciting. I called the midwife, I think it was that day or the next day, and organised a session to have a chat with. I'd already been looking at midwives, and then I hadn't spoken to this one before, but when I spoke to her and talked to her, I hadn't spoken to the other ones I interviewed last year, and I just felt like it just felt right to me, and I just had like the say yes to the dress moment. If you guys ever watch that movie, that TV show where you pick out the wedding dress, like when you're getting pregnant, you're like absorbing and watching all of that content. And I just had this say yes to the midwife moment, and I just like said, yep, I want to go with you. How can we get started? And I was like so excited to have our first session at 10 weeks. She was going to come to my home, and, you know, I had already lined up my postpartum doula, who's one of my friends, and my other friend is going to be my doula. And I was like, that week, that night, I suppose, I told the kids, my husband and I told the kids we recorded it. They were so excited. And my middle child just couldn't believe it. She was beside herself, like, it's finally happened, Mum. Like, it's finally happening. I'm finally going to get a baby. And she's saying, I don't need a reborn doll now for my birthday or Christmas because now I'm getting a baby, and all this sort of stuff. So it was just such an exciting and joyous time. And that weekend I also got to tell my family, and everyone was so excited, and it was just, yeah, wonderful, exciting time. And as the weekend went on, and the week went on, and the weekend moved over, and I basically had, you know, it was causing me a little bit of stress. I ended up, because I was pregnant, I said to a couple people who I had interviews with for my birth doula support, I'd said to them I was no longer available for them. And so I sent them on to other people, and they've gone on to book with other people, which is great. And they have that support. But one of the challenges I was finding is, like, I didn't want to book women for birth doula support too far in advance because I didn't want to be like heavily pregnant attending births. And the other thing is I didn't want to let them down either. So there's been, for the last 8 or 9 months, there's been like this huge uncertainty. And I feel like one of the hardest things for me is like not being able to plan ahead. And so one of the things that was good for me was like, okay, cool, I'm not going to take on any clients. I'm getting rid of all these clients. I can just surrender into pregnancy now, and I'll just work with the clients that I've got. And it felt really doable, manageable. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to be drinking for my birthday. My 40th is coming up, but, you know, I'm pregnant, so it's all good. And just like you start paving the way, start getting excited. I remember like holding my belly. But there were some things that were happening along the way that made me feel like maybe this won't go forward. I just had this intuitive knowing. It wasn't as if like I was magical and knew this thing. It was more that the pregnancy test wasn't getting as dark as it did with my first 3. And so in the forum groups, which is challenging in the groups, you know, people have said that the quality of the pregnancy tests are not as good as they used to be, or people are getting indents and people are getting this. And that wasn't my personal experience. I've only had 4 pregnancies or maybe 5 pregnancies now. But, I'd only had experiences where when I did pee on a stick, it got darker, like significantly darker every single day. And my line was getting darker, but it was taking like 24 to 72 hours to get like significantly darker. And so that was worrying me a bit, but still it was within the parameters. So I thought, okay, fine. Everyone rushes out to go get blood tests. I didn't want to be having to stress about that. I have in the past, but I just wanted to have a bit more of a cool experience, like a just chill. But it was causing me a lot of anxiety, and I think I'd peed on so many sticks out of anxiety at that point. I thought, well, I may as well just go get a blood test and get more of a definitive answer. So at this point, I was kind of checking in with my midwife and asking her, and also checking in with my doctor. And also I was checking in with a naturopath to get all my supplements sorted so I wasn't taking the wrong ones now that I was pregnant, because I was taking high levels of like zinc and things like that are not great for pregnancy. And in the meantime, I'd also done like a postpartum planning workshop with other pregnant women, just like getting ready for my postpartum, and super excited about all of that and letting people know that I was pregnant. And still very early. But I'm a responder, so I like respond to whatever's available at the time and whatever feels right at the time. I was even making slow cooker meals, like making sure I was getting all this like yummy, juicy fat and collagen and like nutrients from the meat, and yeah, just like really embracing the whole experience, and just so excited to be on the experience after 8 months of trying. But I had this like anxiety and worry that was just ruining the experience, and I let it ruin the experience. I was talking to a friend of mine, and she's like, well, you've got the evidence that you're pregnant today, so why not just focus on that and just like embrace that today you're pregnant. And so every day I was like, today I'm pregnant. And I was always like anxiously looking when I wipe. But I mean, I do this anyways for all of my pregnancies because I don't know, I'm just an anxious person. I remember when I found out when I was pregnant with my first, I remember one of the first thoughts I had was like, oh, please don't end in a miscarriage. And I was crying. And so I'm just a nervous Nelly and an emotional wreck from the start, no matter what. So basically what had happened is I got my blood test results. I got one set of blood tests and I got the results back and they were 50. And I was like, okay, that's okay. And I spoke to my GP. She's like, oh, that's great for where you're at. You're only early. And I was like, well, actually, that would make sense why my pregnancy tests were lighter and were taking a bit longer if they were starting really low. And I always knew that I was a bit slower than a lot of other people for my HCT to rise, like just knew that from experience. I remember in a couple of my other pregnancies, the first blood test I got was like 50 or 40 or something. So that was all totally normal and made me feel like a lot more reassured. And then 2 days later, I went and got another blood test, and the test results came back the next day. And that's basically what was happening. Was I was just like, every night I was like, I'm pregnant every day. I'm like, I'm pregnant. I'm so happy I'm pregnant, and just like enjoying the moment as much as I could. Just like grateful, I'm pregnant. And then I basically I was getting ready to go to a birth, and I was getting ready. And then just as I was about to leave the house, I looked at my messages and I had a message in my Instagram from my midwife. And I really wasn't thinking much of it. I just thought I'd get good results. And then she said, your blood results aren't rising. They were 19 and it had dropped significantly. And I just had to compartmentalize because I was just about to go support a woman who was in labour and watch her give birth and be at the hospital. It was like, I didn't even think about it. it was like really hard. My kids were coming in the car with me because it was like a last minute sort of thing, and I wanted to get there really quickly. My husband works in the city, so I was meeting him at the hospital, and we were going to do a handover. And so he came from work. We did a handover with the kids, and I just sat in the car, and when I saw him, I couldn't not say anything. So I said, the baby's not going to make it. And I just got blood results. And the kids were in the car and they heard everything. And I just said to myself, I can't let myself fall apart now. I've got to like compartmentalize this. And I went in and I supported that woman, and there were parts afterwards where I was by myself because they wouldn't let me into the room. The staff at the hospital, they were messed up after the birth, and she got transferred to a different space. So I was literally sitting there for a couple of hours, and it was just such a cruel experience, like knowing that I was still technically pregnant, but like on the way down, and that any moment I was going to start bleeding, likely. And then it just became this, like, when's it going to happen? Hopefully it happens soon. I don't want to have to wait another day. I just want it over and done with. I just want this to move forward. And I think it happened the next day or the day after. My bleeding started, and I'd never had an experience like that. Where I had so many clots and lining and stuff. And it was just really scary for like a day or two, to be honest. And like my GP, my midwife, my friends, nobody had like warned me about it. And I just, like, a friend said to me after, when I asked her it was normal, she's like, I'm sorry, I didn't even think about it. It's like, I understand that like we forget about little bits and pieces of knowledge. But it was just shit. It was really just shit. I hated every minute of it. And I was just crying. I was just grieving. And I just felt really sad for a couple of days. And then I think I just accepted the situation. And then I just kind of refocused and I threw myself into work for a week. And the next week I felt like I felt worse, and I started to have these thoughts like, oh, this week I'd be this many weeks, and this week I'd be this many weeks. And so it was considered a chemical because I was 5 weeks when I had my miscarriage. It was a week and a half after my due period. And then, like, I wasn't sure what to expect. I was a bit disappointed by like the lack of check-in from the midwife, to be honest with you. And I questioned whether like she would be the right midwife for me moving forward for another pregnancy. She was great with like organizing the bloods and getting that really quickly. But I just felt like, even though it was a really early pregnancy loss, like I didn't pay her any money, so she didn't get paid for the support she gave me, which sucks for her, unless she took something from Medicare that I'm not aware of. But as far as I know, she didn't get paid for anything. So also on that side, but I also know from experience that it's a very challenging thing. Like, we don't know when to communicate or reach out to people. And so she reached out like once, I think. But also, you know, I started telling other people, so I had people reaching out, and, you know, I had a lot of support from other people, which, you know, they were my people. So I also know, like, you don't want to, like, ask people too many questions or whatever. So I don't even know what is really appropriate, and I suppose that would be dependent on each person. Like, I've had my sister message me quite a bit, wanting to talk about it with me, and I just don't feel like she's my person to talk to about those things. But it's nice that she's offered, but I felt like I've had to really put my walls up and protect myself to stop a conversation from happening. But she was really kind and organised a friend, because she lives overseas, to drop by and surprise visit with a gift, which was really lovely. Didn't expect that. And I had, support from the doula community. I had a friend drop over some bone broths, and another friend dropped off a candle. I ended up calling the baby Hope. Hope for like a future pregnancy soon. Hope for, for that baby to come round again. And so she dropped round. I'm looking at the candle right now. She dropped around a candle with a H on it, which is really nice. And I purchased a little sign, a little poster from Canva, on Etsy, that has hope and that has like a definition. And so I've bought a frame and everything for it. I just need to print it out and put it on my wall, just to remind me of her. I think she was a girl. I'm saying she was a girl. And I understand it scientifically, like it, and in my mind I was like, it's better that it happened. Like for me, I was like, I'm really grateful that it happened earlier rather than getting to 12 weeks and finding out I had a miscarriage earlier, or the bleeding taking weeks. Like there's positive linings, and I was focusing on those. But it was just like interesting, some of the conversations I was having with people. I got a lot of support from a woman who had a stillbirth of her child. And I think that people who have lost babies or pregnancies, I think they really understand how it feels. But so many people have lost pregnancies, and a lot of the time, like I found from some people, they were focused on the positives, like, oh, well, it's a good thing that, it happened now and not later. And it's like, yes, I know that, but I, at the same time, like, shut the fuck up. Like, I'm telling myself those things, but at the same time, I don't want you to shove that down my throat. I don't want to hear you say that. And it's hard because I can't be angry at those people, or I don't want to be angry at those people because they have well intentions. And I've probably said similar things to people as well. So it's like, you were that bitch. Like, you have been that bitch. And so it's like a lot of love and kindness to myself, but also to people who have supported me in their way, because like everyone can't be everything. You know what I mean? And my husband and my children were disappointed, and they supported as much as they could. And I supported them as much as I could as well. And, we told our family, and it was like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it's just, I think by week 3, I started to really struggle. And so I booked in a massage for that week, the end of the week. And then this thing happened where I pulled a muscle in my back. I had these back spasms that were happening in my lower back. And so then I've just been through 2 weeks of like this annoyance of back spasms and pain. And the lady who came, who was my postpartum body worker, she was saying that there could be like a link between like womb, like losing it, the healing of losing the grief and everything could be stored there, and it could all be interconnected. So that was like really interesting to kind of hear that side as well. And I'm happy to say that my back is a lot better now. While I obviously am still a hot mess, it's very raw to me to think about that loss. I'm very grateful that it happened when it did, but that doesn't take away from the hope, the excitement, the joy, and like 8 months of trying for that baby and feeling like my family isn't complete. I went from having one pathway to being on another path, and then getting that path ripped off me and landing back in that other path. And so I think that's really hard when you're the kind of person that wants to control. And that is definitely me. I like to prepare and plan. I like to be organized. I like to think ahead, and it's really hard to do those things when you don't have certainty. And like, even when you're pregnant, there is no certainty. My mother My brother died at 38 weeks stillborn. So even right up until the end, we don't know what's going to happen. It's just, I think we feel like we have a bit more certainty in different parts of the journey. So I know so many women have suffered pregnancy loss, and I've had a lot of people reaching out to me. Thank you so much to everyone who has commented on my socials, who emailed me. Thank you for your love, because I really appreciate it and I love hearing your stories. I do plan to get some people on to talk about infertility, fertility, pregnancy loss. I would love to do some conversations around that. If you are an expert, or if you can recommend someone, I'm also would love you to email me and let me know. And if you are currently pregnant and if you would like some ongoing support, even though I'm crying right now, I have a lot of love to give. We have a beautiful community in our VBAC village, and I would love to support you in that beautiful container. If you would like one-on-one support, then reach out to me through email. You can check out on my website all of my offerings. I would love to support you. I'm moving a lot into my online work again so that I can support women on an ongoing level, at a deeper level. And I have some very limited availability for my in-person birth doula work. And so if you are local in Brisbane or the Gold Coast, I have some limited availability, but I am not taking on clients from October, November, December. But I have a little bit of availability. But I would love to see you in the VBAC village. I have a lot of offerings going on all over the place, and I would love to connect with you. If you have a story that you want to share, please do reach out. I'd love to hear your story and share your story. This is all about the human experience, sharing those raw stories. It's not about perfection. It's not about not having emotions. It's not about not having tragedies, or, this is life, and this is my life. And, life is hard. Life is challenging, and I'm here to share it all with you. So much love to you, and I look forward to bringing you another episode soon.
Thank you for tuning in to the VBAC Home Birth Stories podcast. I hope today's story inspired you to trust your body, own your choices, and embrace the power of birth. If you love this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another mama who needs to hear this. Do you have a VBAC home birth story to share? I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on ashleywinning.com or on Insta at AshleyLWinning. Until next time, take care and trust your body.